Executive Mayor of Eguruleni, Comrade Mzwandile Masina, all mayors who are here, and leaders of our broader movement from all levels, those who are in government as well, and those who are not in government, who are in our structures. The mayors who are with us here from Eastern Cape, from the home of our leader. Who come from other political parties, those who are with us who come from other countries, receive the revolutionary greetings from the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Today is a special day as we gather here to celebrate and commemorate the exemplary life of President OR Tambo, from which we continue to learn and learn a great deal from this exceptional leader of our movement. This is a man who over time came to be known as the ANC personified because of noble ANC values he espoused in his day-to-day life. It is OR Tambo who was instructed to leave the country and go to head the movement's diplomatic mission to communicate to the world the black people's experiences in South Africa, and to also mobilize international support for the anti-apartheid struggle. Niyasixolela ke bakwethu ngoba masikhuluma with this category of leadership and generation, we almost do as the church leaders do, talking about those who are outstanding leaders in the spiritual world, who did a lot, who appear in the Holy Book. At times, we might be seen as repeating what we always say. That is because of the good work they did. At times when we speak about OR Tambo, Nelson Mandela, Governor Mbeki, Walter Sisulu, it is as if sikhuluma ngabafundi, because of the contribution they made in the struggle for our liberation. And so, if we say what we said yesterday, we are almost like a pastor talking about the Genesis, which he did talk about last week, talking to it from a different angle. This decision was taken by the National Executive Committee in 1960, when there was a realization that the struggle had reached another level unseen before in our struggle. that this leader must leave the country to start an important international campaign to isolate South Africa. It was a follow-up of a decision taken in 1959 to isolate South Africa from the world, which was reflected after the National Executive Committee meeting by a statement made by the General President of the ANC, Chief Albert Luthuli, where he argued that big countries must show their bigness by not allowing the apartheid regime to use everything it had to suppress the black majority. When this decision was taken, it was an implementation of that decision. Our leader, our father, President Tambo, he never tried to negotiate himself out of this instruction. He accepted it as it is, as a volunteer, a cadre and a leader of our organization. He went and executed this task with distinction. It is also important to recall that in 1959, as he was invited to come and open a provincial conference of the ANC, after he spoke, President General Luthuli made a comment and said, even if we die today as leaders of the ANC, we know we leave this organization in capable hands. Because he listened to the analysis, which was both national and global, given by the then Deputy President of the ANC, OR Tambo. What a good feeling President Luthuli gave to be sure, whilst he was there, that when we leave this world, we will indeed leave the organization in the capable hands. And as one of his great leaders, he was not wrong, because OR proved this beyond reasonable doubt, that he did have capable hands. This man who was given this task, little did he know that this mission of exile was the beginning of an uninterrupted, unanticipated, prolonged journey towards recasting, rebuilding, and reconceptualizing the African National Congress. Consequently, he only set foot again in his country of birth 30 years later. Why he had to do this, why he had to rethink how the ANC must be restructured, it is because as he left the country, few years thereafter, there was mass arrest in the country, ending up with the arrest of the leadership of the ANC and the high command of Umkhonto when we had taken a decision to engage in the armed struggle. What was expected at the time is that President Tambo, from time to time, he will come to report to the leadership in the country as to how the campaign was going abroad. He had done his first preliminary report in one of the famous underground consultation conference in Botswana, when people from inside the country and him leading those who were already outside met. He had earlier requested some of the key leaders to join him to assist him in the work he was doing outside. But also, those that he felt if they were to be arrested, they must not be in prison. They must be outside to make a contribution. It is indeed with no particle of doubt when we say it is OR who imbued on all of us the culture of service and sacrifice. Today, we are celebrating a man who was unrelenting in his efforts to see a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. A great man with an unflinching dedication to the ANC, seeing it as the only movement capable of freeing South African majority from apartheid oppression. He was not shy to say the ANC was a beginning of a road to freedom, and that the ANC will be the first organization to lead a democratic South Africa. We are celebrating a man who was never obsessed with himself and the position he held in the organization. He was humble. Arriving at the office every day, he would greet everyone by name and took keen interest in the new faces he didn't know. Such was the caliber of OR Tambo. Leaders and followers felt him, and they felt his leadership. They could relate to OR Tambo. Even if you came and complained about your lost shoelace, he will pay utmost attention and make it a point that you get your shoelace. He wouldn't say, why don't you buy a shoelace? So easy to buy. Because he understood that the capacity of all of us to appreciate things would never be at the same level. And he indeed humbled himself to be at the level of everyone. That's why I'm making the example about the shoelace. Many people have described President Oliver Tambo's contribution to the ANC as unsurpassed. Yes, he was something else. When he got to London, he worked tirelessly to build what was to be seen as a formidable international solidarity movement against apartheid. This formidable international solidarity movement is attributed to Tambo's ability to engage and willingness to listen to other people's views. He chaired the National Executive Committee of the ANC that did not meet less than a week, because his view was you needed to discuss every issue thoroughly, that everybody who is in that meeting should understand it in the same way. There should be no doubt. That's why, during Tambo's time, whether the ANC member was speaking in New Delhi or in New York, there would be no contradiction. The message would be the same. Because leadership of the ANC gave itself time to understand the issues thoroughly. If the ANC met for 3 days, that would be an emergency meeting to discuss perhaps one issue or two. But in the normal agenda, OR wanted every leader to understand, because he said, we are representing the country, we are representing the ANC. If you are a chief representative somewhere, or you go to any meeting, we should have no doubt at headquarters that will represent us. And therefore, the understanding of the issues to him was paramount. Oftentimes, we as a people regard our religious beliefs as a source of difference. OR Tambo, being a staunch Christian himself, he was able to engage people from any religious background about how apartheid was wrong and how all people, despite religious beliefs, must unite against it. So well spoken and articulate was OR Tambo that Albie Sachs tells a story of when he was in London, somewhere addressing a hall full to capacity, reporting on the Albert Lutuli detachment advances into South Africa through what was then called Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, which became locked in battle with the soldiers of Ian Smith. OR continued to report on how the spear of the nation took on the enemy, and how as they left off, they left 5 bodies on the scene. As OR was reporting these great advances by MK, someone from the back of the hall shouted, "That is murder," says Albie Sachs. He says OR was taken aback by this remark, but was able to respond to this claim calmly and in the softest of voices, and said, and I quote, "Yes, we have become killers. This is what the situation in our country has led us to. The tragedy of our country is that our finest and most honorable children are being forced to turn themselves into killers. We believe in peace. and yet we are becoming killers, unquote. Many a times OR met such questions, and he always gave a convincing answer. He himself was described during the Wanki operations by the South African press as a man of God who has been turned by apartheid to be the commander-in-chief of the armed section of the ANC Umkhonto weSizwe. President Oliver Tambo was a Christian, was a man of God, was a humble man. I'm sure we'll recall that the decision to take up arms was as a result of many attempts by the ANC to say to the regime, let us solve the problems peacefully. And the response from the regime was a barrel of the gun, ending up by killing many people who were protesting peacefully. As Madiba said, the time came where we had to choose whether to submit or fight. And the ANC had taken a decision to fight. And in a fight, people die. Once you take that decision, even if you did not want to kill anyone, in the process of our struggle, we know so many sacrificed their lives. From this excerpt alone, we can tell what kind of a leader OR was. He believed that everyone's opinion must be engaged, regardless of how different they were from ours. He believed we needed to persuade the people to support our struggle, to persuade our people to enter into the fight. That's why he crisscrossed the globe, advancing the interests of our struggle. And that's why he wrote that letter that was read earlier here, as part of touching all the souls. His first initiative to call for the support of the ANC was done in the Western countries. They refused. The countries that Chief Luthuli referred to as big countries who must have big hearts. That was partly the reason why he asked his colleague and comrade, Moses Kotane, to come and join him. Because it was clear that we needed to talk to socialist countries who were ready to support us. And it is the socialist countries that supported our struggle. He understood completely that our leadership position in society will be earned through engagement, and that mobilization of support was a critical element to this. He persuaded many. He was a leader of a national liberation movement. In conferences globally, when he took the podium, bilateral consultations will stop, because everyone will want to be at the hall or in the hall to hear the wisdom coming out of President Tambo. All people that interfaced with OR will agree that he was one person who was always oozing with compassion, humility, patience, inspiration, knowledge, and authority. He was a leader of substance. He was a leader prominent among leaders. Every time you interacted with him, you were bound to learn something new. In the NEC meetings, he listened to everyone who was speaking. Even if another comrade thought that this was talking something not important or were better, but OR will listen. Out of that, OR will come up with something. And he usually displayed it when he spoke at the end, remembering what Comrade so-and-so said and what does that mean, how important it was as a contribution to the meeting. He gave time, not just to the collective, but to individual members of the African National Congress. To many who were with him in exile, he was a father, not just a leader or a president, but a father who looked after the interests, all interests. Program director, although OR dedicated his life to fighting the unjust apartheid regime, he never lived to see his best efforts bearing fruits as he was taken from us on the eve of democracy. But it is also important, as we celebrate this giant, to indicate that President Tambo faced some of the big problems